Hey gang, Craig Ripley here. Welcome once again to Living Off the Slab. Now today I want to talk about what happens when, well, things go wrong, right? You all know that I like to plan my trips, but what happens when the road, well, it has other plans? So for those of you who like short videos, right, let me give you the answer to that question. What happens when things go wrong? Well, you take a deep breath and you figure it out, right? You just make things work. It's that simple. Now, while the concept of just fix it is pretty simple, sometimes getting to that point can be a little bit of a process depending upon the circumstances that you run into. So that's what we're going to talk about here. How do you get to the point where you just fix the problem? And also we're going to talk about some things that you can do ahead of time to help you out in case there is a big problem. So in the ebook that I wrote, Traveling by Motorcycle, Achieving Your Motorcycle Touring Dreams and Goals While Still Holding Down a Full-Time Job, I talked a little bit about a couple of the things that we've run into over the years that have slowed us down a little bit or didn't go quite as planned. So the first instance was really a pretty simple problem, but I think it illustrates that some of the things that you might run into, one, if you don't plan ahead, you're going to have to deal with these kinds of things, right? And that is back in 2011, myself and a couple other guys were traveling across country, and on our first day out, we were heading from the Boston, Massachusetts area out to Ashtabula, Ohio, and that was about 585 miles. Now, we decided on this trip that we weren't going to book any hotels ahead of time, right? We had pretty much determined what stops we wanted to make, but we weren't going to book any hotels just in case anything came up. Well, right off the bat on this first night, that choice bit us in the butt, right? Because we rode out to Ashtabula and it was about 5 or 5:30 in the evening. We rolled up to a hotel and there were no rooms available. We asked them, well, do you know any hotels in the area that do have any rooms? And they said, nope, not a one has anything available. And we're like, why? What's going on? And they looked at us and said, it's summer. This is Lake Erie. Now, being from the Boston area, I had no idea, right? I know Cape Cod gets really busy, during the summer, but I didn't think about Lake Erie getting to be like that as well, right? Kind of dumb, I guess, in hindsight, but we had no idea that it was going to be that busy. So basically we looked at each other and we said, okay, what are we going to do? What choices do we have? We can stay here and we can call around and try to find hotels in the area, but again, the innkeepers were telling us that there wasn't going to be anything within at least 50 miles of Lake Erie. So we first said, well, we're hungry, so let's go get something to eat. So we did that, and then we started talking amongst ourselves about how we were going to handle this situation. So in the end, we decided that we were going to have to ride at least 50 miles or so to find a hotel, so we might as well go all the way to Cleveland. Right, and one of the guys had stayed at a hotel over near the airport, which was on our exit route out of town. So we decided to call up and see if we could book there. And we were able to find the rooms, and we then drove the additional 73 miles, I think it was, to get there. So our total that day ended up being about 655 miles, I believe. Now, once we got there, well, we were pretty tired, but we learned our lesson, right? If you're going to be riding near some of these summertime resort areas, you better call ahead of time and way ahead of time. But the rest of the trip, well, we had no problems finding a hotel. So the moral to this first little story, I guess, is two things. One, again, planning ahead sometimes is a good idea. And if you're not going to plan ahead, well, then you have to be willing to maybe do some things in order to make things work out, right? And in this case, we had to ride an additional 75 miles in order to get to a place where we could find a good, comfy hotel. So again, you just need to sit down and relax, not make a big deal out of it, and do what you have to do. Now, the second story I'm going to share with you is a little bit more serious problem, right? That one was, again, pretty simple. All we had to do was ride a little bit farther to find a hotel. But what happens if things get a bit more serious? What happens if somebody goes down when they're on your trip? So on this second one, it happened back in 2015. My wife and I were out on a solo trip running from Boston down to Nashville for a motorcycle club rally that we were going to. And we were having a great time, and we ended up meeting a couple of other guys in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. One of the guys we knew very well, and one of the other ones we did not. But we met them, had dinner, and then we decided to head out the next morning to go and ride the dragon. Before we left to go ride the tail of the dragon, I asked the two guys, said, "Who do you want to lead here?" And of course, they both pointed to me. I'm like, okay. But I said to them, okay, well, let's make some ground rules. If you can't keep up, don't try, right? Ride within your limits, and we'll meet you down at the end, right? On the other hand, if I'm going too slow and you want to pass, just do so and I will move over for you. Everybody agreed. So we headed out and kind of picked up the pace, and we're having a nice spirited ride down to the end of the dragon. Well, we finally ran into a car down close to the end, and I looked back and I only saw my one friend behind me. And I thought to myself, uh-oh, where's this other guy? And we then got to the end. We sat there and we waited for a few minutes, and he never showed up. So I said to myself, well, this isn't very good. And then I voiced that to said my buddy here. And he said, nah, don't worry about it. You know, I know him. He's the kind of guy that if he can't keep up, he'll turn around and go back. I'm like, all right, well, I hope that's what happens, but I don't have a good feeling. Well, we then ended up riding back, this time with my buddy in the lead. And when we got almost all the way back to Deals Gap, in fact, the second turn away from Deals Gap, we were being asked to slow down by some people who were, again, keeping all of the traffic nice and slow going around this corner. And we then got up and saw that our friend was lying in the road and his bike had been moved off to the side. Now, luckily, when we got up there, we found out that our friend was still conscious, and, you know, while he was hurting and beat up, he was being taken care of. There didn't seem to be any major broken bones anyway at the time. So we waited for the police to come, and then the sheriff, and then finally the ambulance came, and they packed him up and carried him off to the hospital. So during this time, while we were waiting for the ambulance, I went and got my wife, repacked the bike, and came back, and she waited there with us. We then got to ride the dragon for the third time that day, but this time following the ambulance to the hospital in Maryville. And again, long story made short, we ended up having to wait in the emergency room for a number of hours, I believe 3 or 4 hours, for him to get taken care of. And then finally he was released with a couple of broken ribs, sprained wrist, and I think a sprained ankle as well, and again, a bunch of bumps and bruises. But he, of course, was in no condition to ride his motorcycle back home or continue the trip. So now we were faced with the task of what to do with this guy, right? We just can't leave him, right? We have our own plans that we want to continue on with, but we can't leave this guy. So now we've got to figure out what we're going to do to help him get back home. Now, every time one of these things, something like this has happened to me, I am always amazed how God, Providence, the universe, whatever you want to call it, helps us work things out. And in this particular case, it just so happened that we were on our way to Maryville anyway to see some old friends, right? So we were able to call them up and say, hey, can you help us out? Can you come and give this guy a ride to a hotel? We're going to arrange a hotel for the evening. We're going to get him a flight back home, and we need somebody to come and pick him up because we can't stick him on the back of a motorcycle. Now, of course, our friends were very gracious to help us out here. They helped us not only get him to the hotel, but also helped get him a prescription filled and some other things as well. So we got him to the hotel, and rather than Kathy and I continuing on to our friend's house, we stayed with our other two friends there in the hotel and helped arrange for a plane flight and getting him to the airport and so forth before we would continue on the next day. So again, I think the moral to this story is that bad stuff does happen. But what do? Well, you deal with it, right? You're not going to run off and continue on with your plans if you've got a fallen comrade, right? You're going to stay and you're going to help take care of that person. And if you need to, you get on the phone, you call the hotels that you're going to the next night, you call your friends, you do whatever you have to do, and you make things work out. The world doesn't come to an end, right? It's, you know, it's not fun to deal with this kind of a thing, but you just stay calm and you deal with it. Now let's talk about some simple things that you can do ahead of time. Again, some planning, right, that might help you in the case of these emergencies, whether small or big, that might happen to you. So first of all, let's talk about this, and that is some roadside assistance for your motorcycle, right? Both AAA now has roadside assistance available for the motorcycle. It's an additional cost, and you can also get it if you're an AMA member. Now for me, I've been getting it through my AMA membership for some time now. I've had the chance to use it one time, and it was great, right? It's really superb service. They are specific motorcycle carriers, at least they were in the instance of the guy who came out to tow us. Now most of the times these, at least in my opinion, are pretty short money, right? My AMA membership, I believe, is $55 a year to include the roadside assistance. And again, I support the AMA anyway because, you know, of all the lobbying and things they do to support us. But getting the roadside assistance, right, is just an added benefit. So number two, you can get some traveler's insurance, right? When we went to Alaska, we were doing this huge trip and we were going out of country, possibly to areas where we might not have any hospitalization available, and we may need to be med-flighted somewhere to a big city or even med-flighted back home. So we wanted to make sure we were going to be covered in that kind of instance. So all three of us who went on the Alaska trip, we took out insurance, traveler's insurance, through American Express, right? And it was pretty short money. I think it was $85, right, for the trip. And I made sure when I called them up, I said, hey, we are going on motorcycles. Are you going to cover us on motorcycles? And they said yes. But every time I buy it, I ask them to make sure that they're going to cover it, right? And you should as well. Whoever you buy the traveler's insurance from, make sure that they cover you on a motorcycle, because some of them don't. Another thing you can do is to get yourself something like this, which is a satellite tracking device. This is a DeLorme InReach SE. They're now owned by Garmin, so Garmin has a new version of this product. Spot is now coming out with a satellite tracker as well that will allow you to do some of the features that this one has that the old Spots didn't, right? Like this one, you can do full text messages and you can have two-way communication, right? If you have an SOS that you need to send, right, you can communicate back and forth with the dispatchers, right, in that case, right? And you can do that through texting either directly on this device, or you can link it via Bluetooth to your phone and you can use your full phone to do the texting, which is much easier. So I strongly suggest that. Cost on this unit, I think this was about $250 or so when I bought it. And the price for the service, if you get the full coverage, which we did when we went up to Alaska, it's about $65 a month, and that's with unlimited texting. And we did that because we had three of us that we wanted to be able to share the text messages and communicate with our wives. So we just going to split that cost. The nice thing with that, though, is that you can turn it off when you don't need it. right? You can put it on hold and not pay the monthly fee. There is a $25 a year fee to keep it active, however. And of course, the big feature, the main thing that you're buying this for, is the SOS ability, right? This will connect you with rescue services, right? You just hit that SOS button and you'll get a dispatcher that monitors worldwide, and they will send people out to get you. So if you're going to hit that button, make sure you really need it because it can get pretty expensive. And because it is so expensive to call the SOS, well, that's why you need the traveler's insurance. Now, I know there's probably some that are going to question the cost of all of this stuff, but I don't know, this is all pretty inexpensive to me when you weigh it against the cost, right, of an ambulance ride or a med flight ride or having to be repatriated into your country, right? That gets really expensive really fast. So, you know, paying $400 or $500 up front, right, in order to have yourself coverage seems to be a pretty good idea, right, and seems to be much more cost effective in the long run. All right, guys, so thanks for watching. If you want to know more, again, please check out my ebook. And also, we have other ways to support the channel as well. And if you want more content, please consider donating on our Patreon page and becoming a Slab Insider. All right, guys, thanks. See you on the road. So thanks for watching, and if you like what you see, please consider supporting this channel. In the description of this video, you'll find several ways in which you can help to support the channel and keep these videos coming. Just pick the ones that make most sense to you. Whatever it is, we greatly appreciate all the help. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.